Okay, everyone, it's Wednesday. Hello, good to see you. I'm so excited that you're here. This is Shark Week here on Wednesday with Will. I've got Derek sitting in the green room, and I'm super excited to share what he has done in his business with all of you. But for anyone watching today that has never tuned in or want to know what this is all about, I created this weekly broadcast to introduce the community here, my community, your community, to people who've inspired me. And Derek and I go back a few years now. I even forget when. When you meet him, you can ask him. And we vibed immediately. Here on LinkedIn, we are all about connections, and we love to be able to support one another. And I remember on LinkedIn, or via LinkedIn, I believe, Derek reached out, and we met at my former life at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I would say, maybe he'll disagree, but we've become friends during this time. So he agreed to come on today. He was someone who was on Shark Tank. Yes, that Shark Tank, the TV show. And he created his own business, and he's just a wonderful person and a great friend. So I'm happy to introduce you. So Derek, I'm going to bring you on stage. Hello, Derek.
Hey, friend Will, I can't believe you would even think that we might not be friends.
Well,
I love
that
you,
was a
though.
little risky. That was a little risky, because you're like ultra cool and I'm not cool, but you know, you know.
I would say that that's debatable who's cooler, Will, because what you've done in your life is something I strive for. So
So I'm going to go through the comments here to see where everybody's tuning in from. But in the meantime, why don't you introduce yourself and explain to everyone tuning in today who you are? By the way, I forget to tell this to all guests. I don't do last names. I just know people by first names. So I'll let you do your full intro, and I'm afraid I would butcher your last name because it just seems
all
so
good.
cool. Okay,
So
Derek, all yours.
my name is Derek Pacqué. I grew up. My life started in Bamako, Mali, West Africa, where my parents they met actually in Africa. So I spent my childhood there before moving to the DC area. Always had a very strong passion to become an entrepreneur. And back in the days when Bill Gates was sort of like the hero, I always wanted to be like Bill Gates to invent something. And so I spent, my early years going through high school really very passionate about entrepreneurship, and ended up going to Indiana University for entrepreneurship, where I started a Hoosier Coat Check. It was a coat check company where we gave out paper tickets. We provided services at these bars and nightclubs where they didn't provide coat check before. It was a very profitable, very successful little business. Um, However, a lot of problems with paper tickets. People drink, they lose them, it creates
Yeah,
lines.
you have a drink
And
and you forget which pocket you put it in, right?
it seems like everyone does, and
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I think over the years, people just aren't used to holding on to paper receipts like they did in the 1920s, maybe. Everything's kind of going digital. And anyways, I thought that was a problem that needed to be solved, and so we invented an app that essentially you are your claim ticket. It sends you a text with your claim number. Pictures are taken of you and your items, and so Coach Checks was formed. Went on Shark Tank, pitched that, got an offer from Cuban, big drama, turned it down, didn't walk out with the deal, and just kept growing the company since then. After the show, moved to New York, uh, started really growing the nightclub bar scene with the application. Then we moved into museums where Will came in. We moved into concert halls, conventions, and that's where Coach Checks really was like, wait, we're doing luggage storage, bag check, we're doing rentals now. We started to do valet. Coach Checks is really just a product, and so we formed the company Chexology, and that's what I'm doing today. We have an amazing team, an awesome team of
You do.
designers, engineers, consultants, ops. We're based in New York, but we're a remote team. We have teams all over the country, from Hawaii to Minnesota to North Carolina. So just really trying to eliminate the paper ticket It's what
I love you. Obviously, I love your product, your company, and all that you do. And you've given me demos, and we conspire to do many great things. And I will. I'm rooting for you to be everywhere you need to be. But before we go into your company, why don't you talk? What obviously you built a company, you had an idea. You're like so many, especially in this community. You have an idea. You want to build a company. What gave you the courage or the thought to actually go on a television show that millions of people watch each week? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think I was a fan of the show, so I loved watching it while I was in college. It really motivated me to, you know, start a business. It was like one of the shows that kind of, if you're an entrepreneur, you watch it. So
Yep.
one of my professors was like, "You should apply." And in my head, I'm like, "But we're a B2B. I don't know if this makes sense for Shark Tank." He's like, "Oh, it doesn't hurt to apply." So what I did when I was looking at the application, it was like all these questions about the business and what you're going to do. And I realized like everyone's probably looks about the same. So I just said, I, uh, I have a business that I started in Indiana. It made $50,000 in my first 6 months. Mark Cuban started a business at Indiana, made a bunch of money in the same bars. He went on to build this technology. It's going to be $1 billion. Throw me in there with Mark. And got a call from the producers. They're like, tell me more. And ended up, working my way onto the show. But ultimately, the reason
That's
why
great. I love it.
I, I saw it as a way to promote what we were trying to do and what we were trying to solve. So I said, just getting in there and telling the story and showcasing how we're solving a problem would be worth it alone.
The experience obviously worked for you because I think you froze. I don't know if it's on my end or yours. Um, the experience worked for you because here you are. You've got this company. One of the things I know we wanted to talk about today was innovation, and I found this quote. And I'm not great. I love quotes. I found this one. And I don't know if you. I should have asked you if you had a favorite, but I thought this one was really great because when you reached out to me and the projects that I was working at the time in my old life, I was extremely interested in doing new things. So here I found if you want something new, you have to stop doing something old, right? We're living through this time, right? Technology is incredible, can help us do so much, but there's these camps that just don't want to let go of the paper tickets. And then there are those, and I put myself in the camp, if I can do something on my iPhone, if I could do something that does not require paper, I'm jumping into it. So, how do you go about convincing people, because habits are hard to break? How do you convince people to move to the new and stop doing something old? I'm curious what those conversations are like for you.
Um, yeah, I start with trying to connect with forget our solution, right? Forget that we replace paper. That paper is familiar, comfortable. It's what people might have been doing for hundreds of years versus ours is something new and it's changed and it's different. I start every kind of conversation with understanding what they're trying to accomplish. So with the service, what's the goal? Like, let's say coat check at the Met. Okay, you want to provide this nice complimentary service so guests don't have to walk around with lugging their bags and their coats. Are you happy with how it's being provided, right? And I start there. Are you like really happy with the overall way it's operating? The service that's being provided. And what I get a lot of times is like, well, there's ways we can improve it, right? And I just like hearing sort of from the prospects in this situation, someone who might be interested. Their stories and their situations. Like, what are your pain points? Are there any? Are you completely happy? And then what I focus on is like, well, yeah, sometimes queues start to happen, and there's really long lines, and they may
Mhm.
say sometimes people come up and they lost their little tag, and then it creates this huge bottleneck, or we misplace coats sometimes, and we don't have any idea what happened. And so, based on those stories, I hear their stories about things they wish they could change, and then I kind of prioritize it and say, we've and I try to connect on I was there. I checked coats. I had a service. I checked them with paper. I dealt with similar problems, or I know some other people that we work with that have similar problems. And, we actually, have tried to tackle that problem. And here's what we've done to solve that line problem or to solve the misplacement problem. And here's how our solution allows for that problem to go away. And so I try to focus it less on like, oh, we use paper and we're familiar with it and this is how it works with paper. I kind of go to
The
this is just,
solution.
yeah, we tried it with paper. This is the best we got. And I even connect with them on that. We have people take pictures. We thought that would help a lot, but then people drop the paper tag so they don't think they need it. Then someone else, oh crap, that's my ticket. And they hand it in and it creates these additional problems. So I try to connect with them on the war stories and the stories and how we kind of come up with ways to solve it, less so than focusing on, let's replace paper. Paper stinks, right?
Right.
And I think that really kind of builds a relationship of like, we're all just here trying to provide a better experience and we're trying to do something better. And here's what we've done. And a lot of times those conversations turn out to like, I recognize, wow, maybe in certain ways the paper's still better. Like we need to still solve this. Let's figure it out together. And that's sort of I don't know if you remember our story is the Met operation is, I think it's one of the top 10 in the world as far as check rooms, like volume for a specific location. The volume of visitors that go through that check room and the conveyors and so really with your team, you guys saw you came to the MoMA, you saw what we had done there, how we redesigned it, and you saw how it could help. But you and we sat down on the drawing board, right?
Right.
Every operation is different, right? You guys have different situations, different restrictions. Right. So I think ultimately it comes down to that. Form the relationship first, really understand what the problems are, prioritize them, see if we can help, and then collaborate. And that's what we were, you and I were doing, Will, for
years.
A long time, trying to make change happen. And it's led to now, new designs, new plans, new renovation plans, and ultimately, eventually change is going to happen for the better at the Met. So, yeah.
I just love what you just said there, the collaboration piece, right? Because I think that you said a few things that really resonate with me. The relationship piece, right? You're some stranger that finds me, we have a conversation, and then you connect. And I really believe this, and many people on this platform and any platform will talk about it. People do business with people. You connect with people. So you can't just go in there as like the encyclopedia salesman, right? Or the vacuum salesman and say, this is my product and this is what you want. You did that brilliantly because we got to know one another. You got to understand what the issues were. And then and you met many in the organization and you're still probably in touch with people in that organization. And that's what it's about. So I just love your approach. And that's why I think we connected because, right, it's about people, it's about the solution and like, okay, getting to the root of the problem, getting to the root of the pain. But then what stalled our conversations, and now we're part of what's happened on a global scale. The pandemic hits and it changes everything. And while we were working on all of this greatness for the future, the brakes were slammed on all of us because we stopped checking codes. You couldn't bring bags into the building. You could not do many things, and many organizations are still struggling to figure out how you do what you used to do in this new world. And watching you and being a fan of everything that you do, I see that you seem to have expanded, right? I would have thought, okay, this is the guy who can help with the code check solution. But now I'm just watching your company grow and the Chexology and just being able to see it's about solutions and what that's been like, because it's beyond what I know you as, but I know you've had big projects and you appear to me and to the rest of the world to be thriving in a period of time where people don't want to touch things, right? I'm not taking your coat. The world shifted. And you seem to have shifted brilliantly. What was that like for you?
Well, it's the COVID was a huge. All code checks shut down across the world. Our entire business, all revenue streams, all usage of the product went to zero, right? And no one provided coach checks. The venues that they're in were all not even allowed to be open by the government,
Right.
right? So
Exactly.
what do you do and this is, part of entrepreneurship is you're going to face these ups and downs no matter what, no matter where you are. Like, you're going to deal with these highs and lows, and it's how you come out. I think the best entrepreneurs are the ones that really are able to be calm and are able to think through the lows and don't give up. And so, looking at that situation, right? We were on the edge. I had a budget. They were gonna, things were gonna change, right?
We were
Everyone, like,
on
we
the
had
tarmac. We were on the
correct.
tarmac.
It was about COVID, and all music, all check rooms shut down, and so there's really two things you can do. You can shrivel up in a ball and decide this is it, we give up, or you can look at what's happening and see if there's any opportunity, anything that you can do to help get out of this kind of troubling situation, that being this global pandemic. And so what we identified was right there before COVID, we had expanded into a bunch of conventions like Javits Center and the Hilton Midtown Sheraton Times Square have these big convention center, and we were we were doing check room projects for them. And one of these operators was like, why don't you do this for luggage storage, like Bell services in hotels, massive ones where we store thousands of pieces of luggage. And in my head, I'm like, people don't get that drunk when they store their luggage, right? Or or is it really having type of volume like at the MoMA Free Fridays where 5,000 people are coming in at once and leave? Like, I'm like, do you guys deal with that? They're like, you need to come see this. So we did what we did with coat checking. Instead of wearing our coat check hat, we became Bell staff. We started checking luggage, and we were like, oh my gosh, it's Tetris back there. It's crazy what's happening behind the
Mhm.
scenes, and it's paper based, and you can't just store luggage like coats where you just put them you play Tetris. And I think what happened is then COVID hit, and we're like, how can we help this world get back to normal? Like, what can we do? And fortunately, we had built a paperless, product that
Right. The
ultimately we're like,
model's
well, let's start.
there, right? You've got the
Yeah,
model, the idea.
let's start with seeing, can we make our process contactless so people could check their codes without having to hand paper back and forth. And this is when people thought it was touch that spread COVID when it first
Correct.
started. So
Right.
we were like, oh, contactless, like, let's see if we can allow people to check things safely. And then we're like, distance. Okay, now people have to be 6 feet wearing masks. Can we provide ways for people to check their luggage, their coats, everything safely? And that became our mission. If we can do that, right? And we looked at it as nightclubs, museums, conventions, all these, they can't really come back and thrive till hotels and tourists can come and use
Mm.
these services. So we saw this as a perfect time to get out of the seasonality we were in with CoCheck, expand to solve problems and develop. This was a time we could focus on developing our product to, service and provide more use cases for where we can eliminate paper. And ultimately, we saw what was happening was everyone was using QR codes for menus, right? Apple Pay and Google Pay was picking up these things that we saw as like, these are things that we wanted and wished adopted faster, but COVID actually led to the adoption of all
Right.
these contactless solutions. And it turns out it sped up the adoption of a product like ours, because now as everyone's coming back, they're like, we want contactless systems, we want technology, we want to provide these types of experiences, where I believe it might have taken way longer for the adoption of these contactless type technologies. So turned
I
into
I
an
have
opportunity.
without you giving away trade secrets and business secrets, right? Confidentiality. But I, being, we're New Yorkers, right? The two of us are New Yorkers, and being around town, you're starting to see tourism coming back, and longing myself to become that tourist and travel. One of the biggest nightmares about traveling isn't about going to a venue in the winter, having check your coat. 12 months out of the year, no matter where you went, whatever the climate is, you have to check out of the hotel. There's a bag. There's all that kind of stuff. And I'm imagining that you're seeing a surge in tourism again, wherever you're operating, and the need is there, and the workforce has changed in such a way that I would imagine your types of solution are much more wanted than trying to get the the temporary person that's just gonna play Tetris in the back stockroom, right?
Mm.
Like you want to hire the temporary person or the summer, the student who's looking for some part-time hours, but give them the technologies that can help you do it. So I guess my question, and I threw a lot at you, you're probably seeing a return to something normal and some growth, because I think all of us who are trying to build businesses um, want to hear that, need to hear that, and would love to your experience, how you weathered, the pandemic and the lockdowns, and how you're thriving. It's inspiration to me.
Yeah, it was interesting because you can't predict, like a pandemic is you just don't know what's going to happen. It's scary. You don't know sort of the future in these situations. And so what came about it was we were just learning. I was tracking COVID cases spreading and how different communities that were ahead, like even China, like learning how they were kind of handling um, dealing with COVID because they were reopening before us
Yeah,
and
you're
you know
following what others have done before you, right?
exactly. And what we were seeing was it all comes down to making people feel safe. It comes down to making people feel comfortable to go back out and try new things, to get back out there, but in a way that they feel comfortable. And we saw this as a huge opportunity to help with that. And so I think what turned out was this awesome adoption to like people trying new things to feel safe and to feel comfortable doing these everyday interactions. And we were that solution. And so in this new world where you have to kind of do things differently, it opened up people's minds to trying our product, to seeing the benefit. And I think it's ultimately led to a, a, a faster adoption. And what I took out of this was, we talk about staffing, right? There was this great resignation where, during COVID, people rethought like what they wanted to do and the jobs that they were doing. And how I've looked at this since day one is when you have a team, right? And when I was overseeing 250 code checkers all around, New York and around the country, I saw CodeCheck as a service. It was a high-end service that it's all about making, allowing people to check their codes and go dance and have fun and not lug things around. But
All
ultimately,
about the guest, right? It's all
yeah,
about the
it's
guest.
about the guest. And what sets apart, like someone could just throw a code into a machine and, like eventually that could be a thing. But what sets apart, I think, a good experience is I saw all these code checkers like becoming very friendly and knowing all the guests and like greeting them and making them feel warm and welcome. And then when they're leaving, have a great night. We'd love to see you again. And it comes down to I've seen during COVID a lot of these code checkers are becoming guest experience team members, and I see us as just a tool to
Right,
help them.
right,
Robots like conveyors can bring codes up, right? They could store codes, they could bring it up, but they can have that interaction with someone to make them feel welcomed, to get them excited
right.
about what they're going to do, and to greet them as they leave. And I think if we can help the staff and the team members that are working CodeCheck, Bell Desk, Luggage Storage focus on those interactions because those are more fun for them,
Right.
and less about just doing mundane tasks like putting a piece of luggage up, breaking their back, and putting it on a shelf, or running around with their heads cut off because someone doesn't have a claim ticket. And they could focus on those interactions and spend their time, building loyalty, making people feel very welcome. Then you're getting the best out of your team members. They're having fun. The guests are having a better experience, and the visitors are having it's a win-win-win.
Right.
And I just think the paper tools have advanced to allow people to focus more on those interactions and less on little tasks like moving things around. So I think
I
this
I
we're
agree
opening
with
up
you.
to that. Yeah.
I really agree with you, and as you well know, and as people who know me know, I spent my whole life in the public realm and fell in love with the teams that I worked with and the public. And there is something about what you just said. There's chaos backstage, right? So whether you're in a store or you're in any sort of public venue, it all looks like what it looks like, and you hope that it looks great to your guests. You go behind the scenes, and sometimes there's people like pulling their hair and crying. Maybe that's where my hair went. But you go through that, but you have this responsibility to get back out there with the guest. And I agree. I'm a big believer in technology and solutions, because if you are able to help those who are helping the public, right? If you have a business and your staff is working face to face with the client, I think it's an obligation to give them as many tools as possible so they can do the human thing. And you just said it brilliantly. You want them to be able to connect. And so often you can't even speak the language in a city like New York, or anyone who travels around the world. You can't speak the language that you're used to. But having technologies that could help you do that, and to be able to leave the staff member in a place of having some confidence, it's just absolutely incredible. There's a question here, a comment here, excuse me, from Enrique. Hello, Enrique. Thank you for your question. And I think this brings up something for you, Derek. And I'm being mindful of time because I know you have a hard stop. Enrique sees technology as an issue. And I think what he's talking about is not every place is wired or able to use the technology. And so I agree with you, Enrique, to be able to make priority, right? Building that infrastructure in this country or whatever country around the world. How has that been for you in terms of having the technology? Because you're moving faster with a product than maybe the bandwidth can actually handle. What's that been like? If you could talk about that technology piece.
Yeah, I mean, areas that provide coat check services, it's a luggage storage services, valet, typically it's like a premium service, right? So typically these places, they have these infrastructures, right? Networking infrastructures. So we're fortunate in that where these services are created, there are pretty good infrastructure for internet, for example. But when we started, it wasn't the case, right? When we started in 2012 and came over to New York 2013, 14, a lot of these nightclubs, concert halls, they didn't have the internet infrastructure. So,
Right.
it was about solving, like, can we run this offline? And we figured it out, right? You don't need the internet. Like, you can actually
Right.
run these things locally. Yeah, you might not be able to send a text message out, but someone could come up and just provide the last digits of their phone number, and
Sure.
pull up a picture.
You can figure
So
it out.
you
Right.
work through the issues. You can't solve, as an entrepreneur, you can't solve every problem. You have to pick your battles. You have to kind of work with what's out there, promote and push for innovation across industry and with partners. What's interesting to me, when people hear technology, they think software, right? They think like robots and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
technology
Siri or
is
Alexa or things like that, right? That's what they think of.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you look at the definition of technology, it's just like the advancement, like it's applications for the advancement of like scientific or practical purposes. It's like machinery, equipment. Like, so if you think about it, back in the 1920s when they invented a paper ticket that ripped, or just the invention of paper was a technology. Just the invention of the hammer, when the hammer was invention,
Right.
was technology. And so it's all about just now technology for our generation is a lot of it is software, robotics, but and it's always scary. Like when someone was like a car instead of a horse, it's crazy, or a horse instead of a bicycle, right? Like a walk,
Right. Yeah.
like jumping on a horse, that's insane.
Yeah.
And a
A
saddle, like
refrigerator instead of a block of ice. Right. Right.
yeah,
As
under the ground.
we evolve. Right.
So it's always gonna, whatever is the technology of the generation, or the era, it's always new, and there's gonna be there's always people that are gonna be scared of change, but then there's always these innovators, early adopters that kind of and that's where we focus. And Will, that was you. You were someone who we had shared vision for what we wanted the guest experience to be. We were creative. We were thinking differently. You were ultimately, right, a reason why these museums make changes, because you're constantly thinking differently and trying new things and pushing for, being creative and taking a little bit of risk and trying something new for the betterment of the long term experience. And I think ultimately that's what it takes, is you have to kind of navigate the waters and focus. And you were saying, like, some people just are so like, I need to use paper. Like, I love paper. I need to
Right.
use it. It's what I know. they may not be the ones to switch right now. And, eventually maybe they'll overcome it,
And you
but,
figure out a way to help
sometimes you
them.
got to pick your battles. Exactly.
And I'm
So,
mindful of time. I wanted to get to David's question, but before we get to David's question here, because I know how to answer it because I worked with you for so long, um, uh, the what you just said, and I believe that what makes me tick, what makes my heart beat, and why I love doing what I do is that I'm this conduit connector enable to figure out how am I going to help my staff and that visitor. And there's all the mess of systems behind you, the logistics behind you, but how in the moment can you figure out what's going to make life easier for those doing the work and what's going to make the guest happy? And that's where the beautiful stuff happens because I didn't know what you could offer. And you start to meet people and you start to come together. And I think that's where the innovation happens, right? You can't convince the world to go from ice blocks to refrigerators or to go from, burning wood in a fireplace to central heating, right? Things evolve over time. But what stays the same is you start to think about the end user. And if you just think about the people and the end user, and for me, what drives me is the people doing the work. If you can figure out how to get a whole bunch of smart people like you, Derek, to come together and help facilitate conversations, you can do amazing things. Now, this question here, I'm switching to David's question because I know we've run out of time. So thank you, anybody who's staying with us. Does everyone who checks in something need to download your app, Derek? And I know that answer, but I'll let you answer it since you're the founder of your own company.
yeah, so absolutely not. You just come up and you are your claim ticket. So the app it's a tool for the operator, the bell teams, the code checkers, the valet operators, where all you do is come up and if you have a reservation, you just give your name, hand your code and walk away. If they don't have your information like your reservation, your phone number is your claim ticket. You just type it in, you walk away. If there's Wi-Fi, you get a text thanking you for coming to the Med and this is your claim ticket. If that phone dies, you lose your claim ticket. You just give them the last four digits. When you type in your information, the front camera has a picture of you, so they always make sure they're giving your items back to the people that check them in. And yeah, we have pictures. The back camera on these iPads are taking pictures of your coats, your bags. So everything is documented. There's proof of everything. Our goal is to make it equal to or faster than the paper ticket at check-in and way faster for checkout. And we just strive to achieve those goals.
I'm totally one of those people. I never take paper receipts. If I could do Apple Pay, I don't want paper. I love technology. So I know you do that. And it was new for me a few years ago when you were showing me that. Since the clock is ticking, I want to be sure to make sure everyone connects with you. And if you don't remember Derek's name, I'll connect you myself. So just send me a message. And then here, Derek, I also have your website available so people can really check it out and look because, hey, that's the point of me doing these shows, right? Connecting people who do great things and supporting one another. And if there's technology out there and people know people, if they can connect with you in any way, I'd absolutely love to be that connector. And I'm going to leave one quote and then I'll leave you with the last word. I'm going to leave with one quote because this is something that I just love. Let your unique awesomeness and positive energy inspire confidence in others. And I used this last week with our guests. I'm using it with you, and I think you are uniquely awesome. And I promise we will meet in real life here in New York City very soon. Anything you want to leave the audience with?
I just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, as you see, I'm one of your biggest fans. Every time you post a quote, I get it on my Instagram in the morning. It gets me excited to start my day. So just keep doing this. It really is inspiring and it's very motivating. So I appreciate you having me on as a guest, and I cannot wait to go grab some lunch or coffee with you, Will. It's been way too long since you've seen me.
And I can't wait to conspire with you again to figure out what we could do next in this city, right? We've got New York City, we've got the world to take over. And if I can help in any way, I'm Team Derek, that's for sure.
Exactly. And I'm Team Will. Thank you, Will, for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and thank you, Derek. And let's talk soon. See you next week.
Absolutely. Have
Bye,
a wonderful
everyone.
day. Bye.